Hello everyone, welcome back to Talkin' Soccer. I am Justin Horniker, and on today's episode we are going to dive into the the second to last, the penultimate group stage matchups before the knockout round. There's been rumors that FIFA is going to get rid of having the final match day all start at the same time, and I just don't jive with getting rid of that level of chaos. There was a time today when both Japan and Costa Rica were on top and they were through from Group E with Spain and Germany going home. Unfortunately, it wouldn't end like that. We'd get half of that equation, but the idea that you wouldn't have that level of chaos in kind of what we've seen for the past 2 days with Mexico being eliminated kind of at the last minute, they had a chance up until the very end yesterday. I don't know why you would want to get rid of the beauty of just how intense that can be and how chaotic it can feel as a fan. So hoping that they backtrack on that for 2026. But in the meantime, let's dive into Group F and let's talk about the madness. So Canada lose to Morocco 1-2. Canada, we can do a little bit of a post-mortem on them here as they really kind of failed to get a win. The only other team besides Qatar, and given how optimistic everyone felt about Canada, knowing that this was going to be a tough group for them, but seeing what Costa Rica were also able to do in a tough group to make life a lot tougher on the teams they faced, it really felt like that after Canada, put up that performance against Belgium that had everyone kind of thinking that they'll be able to make noise in this group. I think it says a little bit more about just how poor Belgium were versus where Canada is at as a program. They still have a lot of work to do to catch up depth-wise to kind of where their positioning in CONCACAF was this year. They kind of took advantage of dumb mistakes from Greg Berhalter, the ghost of Cuba haunting the U.S., and a Mexico team that's aging and losing speed. Now, a lot of that with Mexico is also Tata Martino, who was on his way out after the World Cup, as we kind of assumed, but definitely the second they lost yesterday, he was out of the job. So that was in the contract that he would not be renewing. So Canada kind of get a little bit lucky with that, on top of just the play of Alphonso Davies and Jonathon David. So then becomes the criticism of John Herdman not using the guy that not only got them to the dance, but also the guy who is top 5 in League One scoring right now in any meaningful way. Canada had a real hard time getting Jonathon David involved, and then didn't even start Jonathon David and didn't bring him into the 60th minute today, which I feel like is just a real poor decision. Canada went with Kyle Larin and Jonathon Davies up top, bringing Junior Hollett and Tejan Buchanan up a little bit more into the formation, and having Sam Atakube from Hatayspor and Alistair Johnson as the left back, right back pair. And I think that, proved to be a poor decision, but the fact that you do this, Alphonso Davies is such a talent, but he's not a striker. What are you doing playing him there? He is as strong as he is as impactful as he is because he played, especially if you look at his play at Bayern, because he's playing that left outside back who can get the ball deep, who opens up space, and he's been good for Canada. But in this setup that John Herdman went with in the World Cup, he was not as effective as he has been before. And then you lose your biggest, or I guess second biggest weapon in Jonathon David, and you just completely neutralize them. You can say what you will about, Canada's lack of depth across the field, especially when you look at, your CONCACAF opponents, how deep US is in their starting lineup. Once you get out of the starting lineup, it's not quite as deep, but that is a roster selection issue. But all this to say that all the good that John Herdman did during the build-up of this World Cup cycle, he undoes it with kind of their performance in these last 2 games. That's not to say that there's a lot of doom and gloom coming out of Canada. Sent a lot of reporters that aren't necessarily familiar with the program reporting on it, and there's a lot of doom and gloom around it about them bridging the gap. But I think if you watch the games, if you know the talent that this team has, the talent that's coming up through the Canada system, obviously make more of a name for themselves in 2026, especially with Tajon Buchanan, with Jonathan David, with Alphonso Davies getting older, getting more experienced. And then you also have the players coming up who haven't quite reached that stage yet, who will be there by 2026. So I wouldn't be worried about Canada long term, maybe in the near future, but this was definitely a disappointing performance for them as Morocco win 2-1 with goals from En-Nerizzi and Ziyech. Hakim Ziyech is having a fantastic tournament, as is Hakimi as well, which obviously Hakimi is one of the best right backs in the world, but he is driving Morocco for sure. And Morocco are going to end up facing Spain. That's an interesting matchup because I think while Spain looked great in that Costa Rica match, they haven't quite looked as good in their subsequent performances. There's a lot of fan talk that they would actually prefer to play Morocco than playing Croatia, and I think that may be a bit premature. But Morocco beat Canada 2-1. Let's move on to Croatia versus Belgium. This match ends 0-0 after Romelu Lukaku had about a billion, that's not scientific, but about a billion chances on goal. Lukaku coming in the second half, his first action of the tournament as he's been coming back from injury. Of course, when you're about to go out, you throw all of your weapons out there. Lukaku in his 45 minutes of playing doesn't score but generates 1.73 expected goals and just could not buy a goal. And that's not necessarily his inability to hit the net. That is just, I guess that, but also Dominic Livakovic also just being a fantastic goalkeeper. So that game ends 0-0, and while maybe we didn't expect that low scoring of a match, I actually wrote in my Dimers recap, my Dimers previews of these games that I expected Croatia to get the best out of this. So you look at those final Group F standings, and definitely not what you would expect, but not as surprising as the next group we'll talk about. So Morocco wins the group with 7 points. Croatia make it through in second with 5 points. Belgium with 4, and Canada with 0 points. So with that being said, let's move on to Group E. This group seeing Japan play Spain and Costa Rica playing Germany. Now the Ticos did a lot for themselves here. It's not going to reflect that in the final score. It's not going to reflect that in the table, but given that Costa Rica were the last team in, given that 7-0 trashing from Spain to start off, I thought, especially throughout this game, Keylor Navas doing everything he could to keep Costa Rica in this. They made it a match, and I think that's more than anyone would have ever said for this coming in. So Costa Rica go down 1-0 with a goal from Serge Gnabry, but it stays that way for a long, long time. Costa Rica then getting goals in the 58th minute from Tejada, who can't be stressed enough that Costa Rica is doing this primarily with guys in the Costa Rican League or MLS, and some guys that couldn't even make it in MLS. That there's such a cohesive unit that they're able to punch so high above their weight. And obviously, Keylor Navas, I think, probably goes down as one of his generation's best goalkeepers. He keeps you in a lot of games. He's the reason that you're at the World Cup to begin with. But it can't be said enough just how spectacular they play as a collective group compared to where they are individually. When you see how many teams just completely underperformed this World Cup, and you look at where those players are playing, the profile of those players versus the Tico players who, say what you will about the Costa Rica League, it's not a European league. It's not the Bundesliga. It's not the Premier League. It's not La Liga. You get what I'm trying to say. So to have them, be up 2-1 against Germany after Manuel Neuer is credited as Manuel Neuer own goal in the 70th minute. Now Kai Havertz comes back in the 73rd minute, pretty much right after to tie it up. This was, not a good look for Ronald Matarrita, who comes out pretty much the next play. He was kind of supposed to be marking Kai Havertz and just wasn't able to stick with him. Now you watch that Kai Havertz looks like a whole foot taller than Matarrita, who is 5'9", I believe. Havertz 6'1", and that doesn't really matter when you're trying to mark a man for a ball along the ground, but just quite a look when you can't step with him. And I think it's just an issue of Costa Rica players kind of giving it their all in this game. So Kai Havertz makes him pay, does it again in the 85th minute off a Serge Gnabry assist, and then Nicholas Füllkrug scores his obligatory goal in the 89th minute off a Leroy Sané assist. So Germany beat Costa Rica 4-2, but they would have to rely on, if they were to move forward, Spain would have to score another goal to draw Japan and take those points away so that they can get into the group stage or knockout round. So Germany did themselves dirty by relying on having to get a result from the other game. They needed this game to go their way as well, and it totally did not. Japan beat Spain 2-1. Spain go up early off a Murata goal in the 11th minute. This was a beautiful shot, but it won't be remembered as such, as Japan get goals from Don and Tanaka, and a little bit of controversy off their final goal as Kori Mitoma is sliding to save the ball, and I'll put the picture up here, sliding to save the ball, and on the video it looks like it clearly goes out. Here's kind of the still frame of the final moment, and you can kind of see it's not conclusive on if it goes out. I think to my eye that's touching the line, but I can see why people are upset that this wasn't called out at the moment. But ultimately, we always talk about VAR as getting those millimeters in the game correct. And if we're going to judge it that harshly on the offside rule, this ball, to me, to VAR, doesn't look out. So it stays in. This is turned immediately into a cross that is put in by Ayo Tanaka, and Japan are up 2-1 in the 51st minute. Now they withstand a ton of pressure from Spain leading up to the final of this game. You can look at Spain having 82% of possession to Japan's 18%, which is just wild to me. I've never seen that. I guess I've seen it some, but like not at this high level where Japan ended up getting a win and going into the knockout stage. To only have 18% of possession and still out expected goal Spain 1.45 to 1.04. Just telling you that Spain wasting too much possession here, and they're going to have to get a lot better at that in the knockout round. We'll play Morocco coming up. So Japan play Croatia, Spain play Morocco. Let's go into those knockout groups. Let's talk about all the matches that we know so far, knowing that we have one more day to get this figured out. So of course, Netherlands facing off against USA. I'm going to put together a preview video for this tomorrow. I also have some NWSL news to talk about on this channel tonight, so look forward to that after this video goes live. Argentina versus Australia, Japan versus Croatia. We have the winner of G versus the second place in Group H. That will determine that tomorrow. Of course, the winner of Group H will face second place Group G. We have Morocco against Spain, France against Poland, and England against Senegal. So some tasty matchups happening in the round of 16 so far, and you can kind of future trip a little bit about what the round of 8 could look like. You have an interesting matchup on either the Netherlands or the U.S. Homer and me says the U.S., but I know that's probably not happening. So Netherlands against Argentina, I think, is a fun matchup. Or U.S. against Australia. Japan, we don't know that matchup yet, but you could also have a France-England matchup in the quarterfinals as well, which I think is just fantastic. So let me know what matchups you want to see in the knockout stage down below. I would love to know kind of how your predictions are coming up. There are quite a few teams that never in a million years I didn't think Australia had a chance. I didn't really think that Japan had a chance, although it's making the US's 2-0 losses to them in the build-up to World Cup look a lot better than they were viewed in the moment. And of course, Senegal making it through, Morocco winning their group. Some unexpected results, but that's why we love the World Cup. All right, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't watched me before, make sure you give me that subscribe, give me that thumbs up. I'd love to see you here. And as always, folks, we will talk very soon.